The massive black ships appeared in Earth's sky without warning. They hung there like dark clouds blocking out the sun over major cities across the globe. Each vessel was the size of a mountain, their hulls smooth and gleaming with an otherworldly shine that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Admiral Zexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds. His forearms moved gracefully across the control panels as he reviewed the data streaming in from his scout ships. The third planet from this yellow star looked promising. The beings living there had barely managed to reach their own moon. Their weapons were primitive chemical explosives and crude nuclear devices. Perfect for what the Kethron needed. "Sir, initial scans are complete," reported his second-in-command, Commander Velkoth. The younger Kethron's purple skin rippled with excitement. This would be his first conquest. The humans have divided themselves into over 200 separate nations. They fight among themselves constantly. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Zexthul nodded, satisfied. His red eyes glowed brighter as he studied the tactical display. The humans had detected their arrival, of course. Their primitive radio signals buzzed with panic and confusion. Some tried to communicate with the alien fleet. Others prepared their pathetic weapons for battle. A few even tried to surrender before the fighting had begun. "How many of them are there?" Zexthul asked. 8 billion, sir, spread across 7 continents. Most live in large population centers that will be easy to target. The Admiral's mandibles clicked with amusement. 8 billion was a large number, but the Kethron had conquered the Veltari homeworld with 12 billion inhabitants in less than 3 days. The Morden had put up more of a fight with their advanced technology, but even they had surrendered within a week once their capital city was destroyed. "Begin the demonstration," Zexthul ordered. "Target their largest population centers. Make it clear what happens to those who resist the hegemony." The first energy beams lanced down from the alien ships like spears of blue fire. They struck military bases in North America, Europe, and Asia. Entire installations vanished in brilliant flashes of light, leaving only glass craters where thousands of soldiers had been stationed moments before. But the humans did not react as expected. Instead of mass panic and immediate surrender, something strange happened. Air raid sirens wailed across every continent. Military forces that should have been paralyzed by fear began launching everything they had at the alien ships. Fighter jets screamed through the sky, firing missiles that barely scratched the Kethron hulls. Nuclear submarines surfaced to launch their deadly cargo upward. Even civilian aircraft were loaded with explosives and sent on suicide runs against the invaders. "Sir," Velkoth said, his voice uncertain, "they're not surrendering. They're fighting back." Zexthul watched the tactical display with growing confusion. Thousands of small human aircraft swarmed around his ships like angry insects. Most were destroyed easily by the defensive systems, but they kept coming. Wave after wave of humans threw themselves at his fleet with a fury he had never seen before. "Their attacks are ineffective," the Admiral said, though he sounded less confident than before. "Continue the bombardment. They will break soon enough." But the humans did not break. As the alien bombardment continued, destroying cities and killing millions, the resistance only grew stronger. The humans adapted with shocking speed. They learned to hide their important facilities underground. They developed new tactics to avoid the energy beams. Most disturbing of all, they began working together. The same species that had been fighting wars among themselves just hours earlier suddenly united against the common threat. Nations that had been enemies for decades shared intelligence and resources. Scientists around the world pooled their knowledge to find weaknesses in the alien technology. Dr. Sarah Chen worked frantically in an underground laboratory beneath what used to be Tokyo. The facility had been built in secret during the first hours of the invasion, hidden deep enough to avoid the alien sensors. Around her, teams of engineers and physicists studied fragments of wreckage from destroyed Kethron fighters. "The hull material is incredible," she told her colleague, Dr. James Mitchell. "It's some kind of crystalline matrix that disperses energy weapons. But look at this." She pointed to a section where human bullets had punched through the alien armor. "Physical projectiles can penetrate it. They designed this to stop energy weapons, not kinetic ones." Within 12 hours of the invasion, human forces worldwide received new orders. Abandon energy weapons, use bullets, missiles, and anything else that relied on physical impact. The aliens had made their first mistake by assuming humans would fight like other species they had conquered. High above the planet, Admiral Zexthul received reports that made his blood run cold. Human fighters were successfully damaging his ships using primitive projectile weapons. Worse, the humans had somehow intercepted Kethran communications and were learning their language with impossible speed. "Sir," a communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's in our language." The main screen flickered to life, showing a human face. The creature's pale skin and small eyes should have looked harmless, but there was something in its expression that made Zexthul's skin crawl. When it spoke, its accent was perfect. "To the aliens currently attacking our world," the human said calmly, "you have made a mistake. We know you expected us to surrender quickly, like others you have conquered, but you don't understand what you're dealing with. We are not like the others. We will not surrender. We will not submit. We will fight you until one of our species is extinct, and it will not be us." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Velkoth's purple skin had turned pale gray with fear. "How did they learn our language so quickly?" he whispered. Before Zexthul could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Human forces had launched a coordinated attack on the Kethran fleet. Thousands of aircraft rose from hidden bases around the world. They came in waves, each group using different tactics. Some carried nuclear weapons. Others used swarms of smaller missiles. A few pilots simply aimed their aircraft directly at the alien ships and rammed them at maximum speed. The Kethran point defense systems worked overtime, shooting down most of the attackers. But some got through. Nuclear explosions bloomed against alien hulls like deadly flowers. Even the mighty Kethran shields couldn't stop everything. "Damage report," Zexthul demanded. "3 ships have taken significant damage," Velkoth replied. "The humans are targeting our weapon arrays and shield generators specifically. They've identified our weak points." The Admiral stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In just one day, this primitive species had learned to fight his advanced fleet more effectively than the Morden had managed in a week of battle. On the surface, the human resistance continued to grow. General Patricia Williams coordinated the defense from a mobile command center hidden in the Rocky Mountains. Around her, officers from dozens of nations worked side by side, sharing information and resources without the political barriers that had divided them for centuries. "Beijing reports they've successfully reversed the alien shield technology," one officer announced. "They're already building prototypes." "Moscow has figured out how to jam their communications," said another. "They can disrupt alien coordination for up to 6 minutes at a time." Williams nodded grimly. The aliens might have superior technology, but humans had something else: the ability to learn and adapt faster than any species in the galaxy. Every alien weapon that fell into human hands was studied, improved, and turned against its creators. As night fell over the devastated planet, both sides prepared for the long war ahead. The Kethran had expected a quick conquest but found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The humans had lost millions in the first day, but they had also proven something important: they could hurt the invaders. In his private quarters, Admiral Zexthul reviewed the casualty reports with growing unease. The Kethran had lost more ships in one day fighting humans than they had lost in their previous 3 conquests combined. These creatures fought with a desperate creativity that defied all military logic. But what truly worried him was a single line in the intelligence report. "Human population shows no signs of surrender despite massive casualties. Resistance appears to be strengthening." The Admiral's hands trembled as he realized the truth. The Kethran hadn't just failed to conquer Earth in 72 hours. They had awakened something that might be more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Outside his window, human rockets continued to streak upward through the night sky, carrying their message of defiance to the stars. 3 months had passed since the Kethran invasion began, and Commander Velkoth was beginning to understand why his people had never encountered anything like humanity before. The young officer led his patrol through the ruins of what the humans called Chicago, stepping carefully over piles of concrete and twisted metal that had once been towering buildings. The city should have been empty. The orbital bombardment had leveled most of it in the first week. But the humans refused to abandon their territory. Instead, they had gone underground, turning the rubble into a maze of tunnels and hidden bunkers. Every pile of debris could hide a sniper. Every intact building could be a trap. "Stay alert," Velkoth told his squad through the comm system. Intelligence reports estimate 2,000 human fighters still active in this sector. His soldiers moved in perfect formation, their advanced armor gleaming purple in the dim sunlight. Each Kethran warrior was worth 10 human soldiers in open combat. Their energy weapons could cut through any human defense. Their shields could stop most human attacks. On any other world, this patrol would have been a simple cleanup operation. But this was Earth, and humans didn't fight like any other species. The attack came without warning. One moment the street was empty. The next, explosions erupted from every direction, but these weren't the crude chemical bombs the humans had used in the early days. These devices used modified Kethran technology, somehow improved to be more powerful than the originals. Velkoth dove behind a broken wall as his shields flared under the assault. Around him, his squad scattered for cover. 3 of his soldiers were down already, their advanced armor cracked open by weapons that shouldn't have existed. "How did they get our technology?" one of his sergeants shouted over the noise. Before Velkoth could answer, small figures emerged from the rubble. Human fighters, their faces covered with makeshift masks, their bodies protected by crude armor welded together from alien metal. They moved with deadly purpose, using the ruined city like it was their home, because it was their home. The battle lasted only minutes, but when it was over, half of Velkoth's squad was dead or wounded. The humans melted away into their tunnels as quickly as they had appeared, taking Kethran weapons and equipment with them. It was the same story across the planet. The superior alien army was being slowly bled to death by an enemy that refused to fight fair. In the underground research facility that had once been CERN, Dr. Sarah Chen studied the latest acquisition from the surface teams. It was a Kethran communication device, still functional despite being torn from a destroyed alien fighter. Around her, scientists from every human nation worked together with an intensity born of desperation. "The encryption is incredibly complex," said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, one of the computer specialists, "but we're starting to understand the patterns. Their language follows mathematical principles that are actually quite elegant." Dr. Chen nodded, but her attention was focused on something else. "Look at this power cell," she said, holding up a small crystalline object that pulsed with internal light. "The energy density is impossible by our understanding of physics. But if we can figure out how it works, we can build better weapons," finished Dr. James Mitchell. He had been working without sleep for days like most of the team. "How long do you think we have?" Chen looked up at the concrete ceiling, knowing that somewhere above them alien ships still patrolled the skies. "Not long enough, but maybe long enough." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A 12-year-old girl named Amy Rodriguez had been hiding in the ruins of Los Angeles when she found a damaged Kethran datapad. Instead of taking it to the authorities, she had tried to fix it herself using spare parts from old computers. When resistance fighters finally found her 3 days later, she had somehow accessed the alien database and was reading Kethran technical manuals. Within hours, Amy was on a secure transport to the underground facilities. Within days, human scientists were building devices that the Kethran had thought impossible. The humans weren't just copying alien technology anymore, they were improving it. Admiral Zexthul stood in his war room staring at reports that made no sense. Human resistance was supposed to be weakening after 3 months of bombardment. Instead, it was growing stronger. The primitives had somehow developed energy shields that were more efficient than Kethran designs. Their fighters were now armed with weapons that could punch through his best armor. "Sir," Commander Velkoth said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. The young officer had aged years in just months of fighting humans. "I've lost another patrol today. The humans are using our own technology against us, but they've modified it somehow. Their weapons are more powerful than ours." "That's impossible," Zexthul replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "They're a primitive species. They've barely reached their own moon." "With respect, sir, I don't think they're primitive anymore." The Admiral's 4 hands clenched into fists. "Explain." Velkoth activated a holographic display showing the tactical situation across Earth. Red dots marked human resistance strongholds. There were thousands of them spread across every continent. They've created a global communication network using our own technology. They share information instantly across their entire planet. When one group develops a new weapon or tactic, every other group knows about it within hours. The hologram zoomed in on specific locations. Look at this facility in what they call Australia. 3 weeks ago it was a mining operation. Now it's producing hybrid vehicles that combine human and Kethran technology. And here, the display shifted to Europe. They've converted an automotive factory to build armor that's actually superior to our own designs. Zexthol studied the display with growing horror. How many of these facilities are there? We've identified over 500, sir. And that's just the ones we know about. But the most disturbing reports weren't about human technology. They were about human behavior. The species that had been fighting among themselves for thousands of years had unified with a speed that defied belief. Children who should have been traumatized by the invasion were instead learning alien languages and technologies. Elderly humans who should have given up hope were building bombs in their basements. The psychological profiles made for terrifying reading. Humans didn't just adapt to danger and they thrived on it. The constant threat of extinction had triggered something in their species that made them more creative, more cooperative, and more dangerous than ever before. Dr. Chen emerged from her laboratory with news that would change everything. Her team had finally cracked the Kethran communication codes completely, but more importantly, they had discovered something the aliens didn't want anyone to know. They're not invincible, she announced to the resistance leadership gathered in the secure briefing room. They've conquered other species, yes, but look at this. The screen displayed decoded Kethran military records. The Veltari surrendered without a fight. They're a pacifist species that had never developed weapons. The Mordun put up resistance for exactly 6 days before their government capitulated. Every other species the Kethran conquered gave up quickly once they realized they were outmatched. General Williams leaned forward. But we haven't given up. Exactly. And that's not the most important part. Chen pulled up another file. According to their own records, the Kethran have never fought a war that lasted longer than 2 weeks. Their entire military doctrine is based on quick, overwhelming victories. They don't know how to fight a long campaign. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The aliens weren't just struggling to defeat humanity. Oh, they were fighting a type of war they had never experienced before. There's more, Chen continued. I've been monitoring their communications. Morale among their forces is collapsing. They're requesting reinforcements, but listen to this. She played an intercepted transmission. The alien voice was clearly stressed, speaking rapidly in the clicking language of the Kethran. The translation appeared on screen. Request immediate evacuation from Sector 7. Local humans have developed acoustic weapons that disrupt our neural patterns. 3 soldiers have suffered permanent psychological damage. We cannot hold this position. Another transmission. Humans in Sector 12 have weaponized their own children. Juvenile humans approach our positions appearing harmless, then detonate explosive devices. Morale among the troops is at critical levels, and another. The humans have learned to mimic our distress calls. They lure our rescue teams into ambushes using perfect reproductions of our emergency signals. Recommend abandoning all rescue operations in human territory. General Williams stood slowly, a grim smile spreading across her face. They're afraid of us. More than afraid, Chen replied. They're starting to break. But we need to push harder. They still have orbital superiority, and their technology is still more advanced than ours. We need to make them want to leave more than they want to conquer us. That night, human radio transmissions began broadcasting a new message into space. It was sent on every frequency the Kethran used, in perfect alien language with no accent or grammatical errors. The message was simple, but its implications were terrifying to any species that heard it. To all Kethran forces and any alien species monitoring these transmissions. You came to our world expecting an easy conquest. You found a war instead. You thought we would surrender. Q Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars through the main viewport. 6 months ago, she had been Dr. Sarah Chen, a particle physicist working in an underground laboratory. Today, she commanded humanity's first interstellar warship. Built from salvaged alien technology and pure human determination, the ship looked like it had been assembled in a junkyard, because in many ways, it had been. The hull was a patchwork of human steel and Kethran armor plating. The engines were reverse-engineered alien drives powered by human-built fusion reactors. The weapons were a combination of both technologies that somehow worked better than either species had managed alone. Captain, called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the navigation station. She was Amy Rodriguez, the 12-year-old girl who had first cracked Kethran technology, now 14. She had the best understanding of alien systems of any human alive. We're approaching the Kethran mining colony. Sensors show 12 ships in orbit and approximately 10,000 aliens on the surface. Chen nodded, studying the tactical display. This would be humanity's first offensive. Action beyond Earth. The message was simple. The war was no longer confined to one planet. Open a channel to the colony, she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a Kethran commander whose purple skin had gone pale with shock. The alien had obviously recognized the ship's design as partially Kethran, but couldn't understand how humans had acquired it. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Retribution," she said calmly. "You have 15 minutes to evacuate the system. Any ship or person remaining after that time will be destroyed." The Kethran commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. "This is impossible. Your species cannot travel between stars. You do not have the technology." Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the alien step backward from his screen. "We didn't have the technology 6 months ago, but you brought it to us, along with a very valuable lesson about what happens when you threaten human children." The transmission cut off. Within minutes, Kethran ships began fleeing the system as fast as their engines could carry them. They left behind mining equipment worth millions of credits and a colony that had taken decades to build. But they had learned something important. Humans kept their promises. Back on Earth, the war had transformed into something the Kethran had never experienced. What should have been a simple occupation had become a nightmare of guerrilla warfare and technological advancement. Human resistance fighters didn't just attack alien positions, they studied them, learned from them, and then built better versions. Commander Velkoth led what remained of his unit through the ruins of New York City. Once he had commanded 50 soldiers. Now only 12 were left. The others had been killed or wounded in the endless series of ambushes and raids that characterized fighting on Earth. The humans had learned to use their own destroyed cities as weapons. Every collapsed building was a fortress. Every subway tunnel was a highway for moving troops and supplies. The aliens had superior firepower, but the humans had home field advantage and an inexhaustible supply of creativity. "Sir," whispered Sergeant Kalneth, one of his few remaining veterans. "Motion sensors detect movement ahead. 12 contacts moving through the underground tunnels." Velkoth checked his weapon and signaled for his troops to take defensive positions, but as they waited for the attack, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into another trap. The humans had become masters of deception, using holographic projectors stolen from Kethran equipment to create false sensor readings. The attack came from above instead of below. Human fighters had learned to use the Kethran's own anti-gravity technology to position themselves on the sides of buildings like insects. They dropped down behind the alien patrol, cutting off their retreat route before opening fire with weapons that shrieked and howled like living things. These weren't the crude projectile weapons humans had started with. These were hybrid devices that combined human engineering with Kethran energy technology. They fired bullets that could phase through alien shields, guided by targeting systems that were more accurate than anything the Kethran had ever built. The battle lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, Velkoth found himself alone among the bodies of his soldiers, surrounded by human fighters who should have been dead or captured months ago. Instead, they looked stronger and more confident than ever. "Commander Velkoth," said one of the humans speaking perfect Kethran, "we have a message for your admiral." The human produced a small recording device and activated it. Velkoth's own voice emerged from the speaker, but he had never spoken these words. "Admiral Zexthul, the human resistance has captured another patrol. They say to tell you that they know where the homeworld is. They say they're coming." "How did you?" Velkoth began. But the human cut him off. "We learned your language. We learned your technology. We learned your tactics. Now we're learning your voices." The human's smile was cold and predatory. "Tell your admiral that this war ends when all Kethran forces leave our solar system. Every day you stay, we get stronger. Every day you stay, we learn more about you. And when we're ready, we're going to visit every world in your empire." The humans vanished into the ruins as quickly as they had appeared, leaving Velkoth alone with the recording device and a growing certainty that his species had awakened something terrible. In the hidden shipyards beneath the Pacific Ocean, humanity's fleet was growing. The first ship had been a desperate improvisation. The 10th ship was a work of art. By the time the 50th ship rolled out of the construction bays, even the human engineers were amazed at what they had accomplished. Dr. Elena Vasquez ran the Xenobiology Division, studying captured Kethran soldiers to understand their weaknesses. What she had discovered would have horrified her 6 months ago. Now it simply made her more determined. The Kethran are actually quite fragile, she explained to the military briefing. They evolved as apex predators on their homeworld, but they've never faced sustained psychological pressure. Their brain chemistry breaks down under prolonged stress in ways that human brains don't. She displayed brain scans from captured aliens. This is a Kethran soldier after 1 month of capture. Notice the degradation in the frontal lobe. This is after 3 months. The damage is permanent. They literally cannot handle long-term warfare. General Williams studied the data with professional interest. How long does it take for the breakdown to occur? It varies, but usually between 2 and 6 months of active combat. The problem is that their entire military doctrine is based on quick victories. They've never had to develop psychological resilience for extended campaigns. And humans? Dr. Vasquez smiled grimly. Humans get stronger under pressure. Our stress response actually improves cognitive function during crisis situations. We're literally built for this kind of warfare. The implications were staggering. The Kethran hadn't just chosen the wrong species to conquer they had chosen the one species in the galaxy that was naturally adapted to exactly the kind of war they were now fighting. Admiral Zexthul stood in his command center, staring at reports that defied everything he knew about warfare. Human ships were appearing throughout Kethran space, attacking military installations and mining colonies with surgical precision. Each attack was perfectly planned and flawlessly executed. No human ship had been captured or destroyed. Worse, the humans were sending messages, not demands for surrender or negotiations for peace. Warnings. Each attack came with a broadcast that was the same in tone, but different in content. This facility violated the territorial sovereignty of Earth. The penalty is destruction. These weapons were used against human civilians. The penalty is confiscation. This colony supported military action against humanity. The penalty is evacuation. The humans weren't just fighting a war, they were conducting a systematic dismantling of the Kethran Empire, and they were doing it with a cold efficiency that suggested they had planned this campaign in detail. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we've lost contact with the mining operation at Kelvar. The last transmission was a human warning to evacuate. The colony had 30,000 inhabitants. Survivors?" Zexthul asked, though he already knew the answer. "Unknown, sir. When our scout ships arrived, the planet was empty. No bodies, no destruction, no trace of what happened to the population. Just empty." The Admiral's hands trembled as he processed this information. The humans weren't just destroying Kethran facilities, they were making entire populations disappear without leaving evidence of how they had done it. But the worst news came from the homeworld itself. Human transmissions were being detected throughout the Zethkul system. Not ships, just radio signals that appeared and disappeared too quickly to trace. The humans were somehow conducting reconnaissance of the most heavily defended system in the Empire. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's addressed to you personally." The main screen activated, showing a human face that Zexthul recognized from intelligence files. This was General Patricia Williams. 18 months after the invasion began, the Kethran hegemony was collapsing. What had started as a simple conquest had become an extinction-level threat to their entire civilization. Admiral Zexthul stood in his private quarters aboard the flagship, reading reports that chronicled the systematic destruction of everything his people had built over centuries. The humans had stopped just attacking military targets. Now they targeted anything that supported the Kethran war effort. Mining colonies, research stations, even agricultural worlds all had received the same ultimatum: evacuate or disappear. Most chose to evacuate. The few that didn't were found empty when Kethran rescue ships arrived. "Sir," Commander Velkoth entered the room without waiting for permission. The young officer looked like he had aged decades in the past year. His purple skin had faded to gray, and his eyes held the hollow look of someone who had seen too much horror. The High Command is requesting your immediate return to Zethkul. Zexthol didn't look up from his reports. What's the situation at the homeworld? Human ships have been detected in the outer system. They're not attacking, sir. They're just watching. Our defense fleets are in full alert status, but the humans maintain their distance. It's like they're studying us. The Admiral finally raised his head. How many ships? Unknown, sir. Our sensors detect them for a few minutes, then they vanish. We think they're using some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before. Zexthal wasn't surprised. In 18 months, human technology had advanced at an impossible rate. Ships that had started as crude copies of Kethran designs had evolved into something entirely new. Human engineers didn't just reverse engineer alien technology out, they improved it in ways that defied understanding. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been studying this phenomenon from her laboratory deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. What she had discovered would reshape everyone's understanding of human nature and explain why the Kethran were losing so badly. Intelligence shows that human creativity increases under stress, she explained to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We don't just adapt to danger, we become more innovative when threatened. The Kethran invasion didn't just unite our species. It triggered an evolutionary response that's made us more capable than we've ever been. The data supported her conclusion. Human children were learning alien languages in weeks instead of years. Engineers were solving technological problems that had puzzled them for decades. Even ordinary civilians were displaying levels of intelligence and creativity that would have been considered genius level before the war. The Kethran made a fundamental error in their invasion planning. Dr. Vasquez continued. They assumed we would respond to pressure the way their species does Ralao, by breaking down and surrendering. But humans are the opposite. We get stronger under pressure. It's what allowed us to survive ice ages, volcanic winters, and every other extinction event our planet has thrown at us. General Williams nodded grimly, which means we're not the same species they started fighting 18 months ago. Exactly. We're better, smarter, more united, and we've learned everything they know about warfare while developing our own innovations they can't counter. The proof was in the numbers. Human battle fleets now fielded ships that were superior to Kethran designs in every measurable way. They were faster, more maneuverable, better armed, and nearly invisible to alien sensors. More importantly, they were crewed by humans who had been trained in combat techniques that combined the best of both species' military knowledge. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the lead ship in the final assault fleet. The UES Retribution had been upgraded 3 times since its first mission, and each upgrade had made it deadlier. Now it led a formation of 200 human warships approaching the Kethran homeworld of Zethkul. Captain, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from her position at the sensor station. Kethran defense fleets are moving to intercept. I count over 500 ships. Chen studied the tactical display with calm professionalism. The Kethran had assembled the largest fleet in their history to defend their homeworld. Under normal circumstances, it would have been more than enough to destroy any attacking force, but these weren't normal circumstances. Signal the fleet, Chen ordered. Execute Pattern 7. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, splitting into smaller groups that attacked from multiple angles simultaneously. But this wasn't just a military assault, Arbo. It was a demonstration of technological superiority that the Kethran couldn't match. Human weapons had evolved beyond simple energy beams and projectiles. They now fired rounds that could phase through shields, guided by targeting systems that predicted enemy movements with mathematical precision. Human shields didn't just deflect attacks, Adoro. They absorbed energy and redirected it back at attackers. Most devastating of all, human ships could disappear in the middle of battle, reappearing behind enemy lines to strike at undefended targets. The Kethran had never developed stealth technology because they had never needed it. Their doctrine had always been based on overwhelming firepower applied directly. Admiral Zexthol watched the battle from his command center on Zethkul's surface. What he saw defied everything he understood about warfare. The human fleet was smaller than his own, but they were winning with an ease that suggested they weren't even using their full capabilities. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we've lost 60 ships in the first 15 minutes. Human casualties appear to be 0. That's impossible, Zexthol replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Nothing about this war had followed normal patterns. Sir, the humans are broadcasting a message to the planet. The main screen activated, showing Captain Chen's face. She looked tired but determined, like someone who had traveled a very long distance to deliver an important message. "People of Zethkul," she said in perfect Kethran, "your leaders brought war to our homeworld. They killed our children and destroyed our cities. They expected us to surrender quickly, like the other species you have conquered. But we are not like the others." The camera pulled back to show the bridge of the Retribution, where human officers worked at stations built from a combination of technologies that neither species could have. Developed alone, we offer you the same choice your admiral offered us 18 months ago. Surrender or face extinction. But unlike your leaders, we will keep our word. Surrender now and your people will live. Continue this war and we will do to your species what you tried to do to ours. The transmission ended, but the implications were clear. The humans had crossed interstellar space, defeated the most powerful military in the galaxy, and were now offering the same terms the Kethran had offered Earth. But there was a difference. When the Kethran had made their ultimatum, it had been a bluff designed to force quick surrender. When the humans made theirs, everyone knew they had the capability and determination to carry it out. Commander Velkoth stood in the ruins of the primary defense station, watching human fighters land in the capital city. The battle for Zethkul had lasted less than 6 hours. The most heavily defended world in the Kethran Empire had fallen faster than any human city during the invasion of Earth. The human soldiers who emerged from their transports moved with the confident efficiency of a species that had been fighting for survival for over a year. They secured strategic locations with surgical precision, but they didn't harm civilians. This wasn't a massacre or wow. It was an occupation conducted by professionals who understood the difference between military necessity and cruelty. A human officer approached Velkoth, speaking in accented but understandable Kethran. "Commander, you're ordered to report to the temporary command center for debriefing." Velkoth nodded, studying the human's face. This soldier looked young, probably no older than Velkoth himself. But there was something in his eyes that spoke of experiences that aged a person beyond their years. "How did you learn to fight like this?" Velkoth asked as they walked through the city streets. The human considered the question seriously. "You taught us. Every attack on our world was a lesson in your capabilities. Every weapon you used against us became a model for building better ones. Every tactic you employed was studied and improved. You turned us into the perfect enemy for your species. But we were superior in every way," Velkoth protested. "Our technology, our weapons, our experience. You were superior when the war started," the human agreed. "But you made 2 critical mistakes. First, you assumed we would stay the same while you fought us. Second, you gave us time to learn." They arrived at what had been the planetary government building. Human technicians were already installing communication equipment, preparing to broadcast surrender terms to the remaining Kethran fleets throughout the galaxy. "What happens now?" Velkoth asked. The human officer looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. "Now you learn what it means to live under the authority of a species that never forgets and never forgives those who threaten their children. But you also learn what it means to live under the protection of a species that keeps its word." Admiral Zexthul was brought to the command center in restraints. Though the humans had been respectful in their treatment of him, he stood before General Williams, who had traveled from Earth specifically for this moment. "Admiral," she said in Kethran. 5 years after the Kethran invasion, President Maria Santos stood before the assembled representatives of the Terran Federation Council. The chamber had been built in the ruins of the United Nations building in New York, but it now housed delegates from 17 different species across 12 star systems. The transformation had been remarkable. What had started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become the foundation of the largest interstellar government in galactic history. But this wasn't the result of conquest, Ira. It was the result of other species actively seeking human protection. "The delegate from Veltar has the floor," President Santos announced. Ambassador Quinvel, a graceful being with translucent blue skin, rose from her seat. Her species had been the first to make contact with humanity after the Kethran surrender, and their request had shocked human leaders. "Honored President," Quinvel said in accented English, "the Veltari Republic formally requests continued protection under the Terran Defense Treaty. Intelligence reports indicate that the Mordan Empire is mobilizing forces near our border systems. President Santos nodded calmly. The motion is noted. Admiral Chen, what is the status of our patrol fleets in Veltari space? Admiral Sarah Chen, now commander of the Solar Defense Fleet, consulted her datapad. 3 battle groups are currently stationed in the region. Additional forces can be deployed within 48 hours if needed. The ease of the exchange would have been impossible to imagine during the dark days of the invasion. Humanity had gone from fighting for its survival to being the dominant military power in this section of the galaxy. But more importantly, they had proven that their protection was worth seeking. The Veltari had been the first to understand this. As a peaceful species with limited military capabilities, they had watched the human-Kethran war with growing amazement. When it became clear that humans had not only survived but completely destroyed their attackers, the Veltari government had sent a diplomatic mission to Earth. Their request had been simple: protection in exchange for technology and trade agreements. The humans had agreed, establishing the first of what would become dozens of similar arrangements. The delegate from Mordun has requested to address the council, President Santos announced. A new figure appeared on the main screen via holographic transmission. Commander Theknal of the Mordun Empire looked nothing like the elegant Veltari. His species was heavily built and covered in thick, armor-like skin that spoke of evolution on a harsh world. The Mordun had been one of the Kethrans' most challenging conquests, and they had never fully accepted alien rule. President Santos, Theknal said, his voice carrying the formal tones of a career military officer. The Mordun Empire wishes to propose a mutual defense agreement with the Terran Federation. The chamber fell silent. The Mordun had been testing human resolve for months, probing the edges of protected space and making threatening gestures toward smaller Federation members. This sudden change in attitude could only mean one thing. They had finally realized what every other species in the region already knew. Fighting humanity was a losing proposition. What terms does the Mordun Empire propose? President Santos asked. Full integration into the Federation structure. Our military forces will be placed under joint command with human officers. Our territory will be open to Federation patrols. In exchange, we request the same protection and trade benefits offered to other member species. Admiral Chen leaned forward slightly. She had been expecting this moment ever since the Mordun began their provocative actions. And what guarantees can you offer regarding future compliance with Federation law? Theknal's expression didn't change, but there was something in his posture that suggested submission. The Mordun Empire understands that Federation law is enforced by species capable of traveling between star systems to eliminate threats to their children. We have no desire to test human resolve in such matters. The message was clear. The Mordun had heard the stories of what happened to species that threatened humanity. They had seen the empty worlds where Kethran colonies once stood. They understood that joining the Federation wasn't just about protection. It was about survival in a galaxy where humanity had established itself as the apex predator. In the years following the Kethran surrender, humanity had faced a choice. They could have become conquerors themselves, using their technological and military superiority to build an empire based on fear. Instead, they had chosen a different path. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now director of the Federation Science Council, had been instrumental in shaping humanity's post-war policies. Her research into human psychology during the invasion had revealed something important. Humans performed best when they had something to protect, rather than something to dominate. The key insight, she explained to President Santos during a private briefing, is that humans are naturally protective rather than aggressive. We fight fiercely when threatened, but we're actually more successful when we're defending others than when we're attacking them. This understanding had shaped the Federation model. Instead of conquering other species, humanity offered them a bargain: accept human protection and follow Federation law, and gain access to the most advanced technology and strongest military in the galaxy. The results spoke for themselves. Federation space was the most peaceful and prosperous region in the galaxy. Trade flourished under human protection. Scientific advancement accelerated when multiple species shared their knowledge freely. Even former enemies found that life under human authority was better than the constant warfare that had characterized the galaxy before, but there were reminders of what happened to those who chose differently. Commander Velkoth, now serving as a liaison officer in the Federation military, led a tour group through the Kethran Memorial Museum. The facility had been built on one of the former Kethran worlds, now administered by the Federation as a reminder of the costs of aggressive expansion. This is where the Kethran High Command made their final stand, he explained, to a group of young officers from various species. They chose to fight rather than accept the terms offered by humanity. The display showed the remains of a once mighty fortress, reduced to scattered debris by human weapons that left no trace of the beings who had operated it. It was a sobering reminder that human mercy had limits. "What happened to the survivors?" asked a young Veltari officer. Velkoth's expression grew thoughtful. There were no survivors from this facility. The Kethran leadership chose death over surrender, but the civilian population was relocated to reservation worlds, where they could live in peace under Federation protection. It was a carefully balanced message. Resistance to humanity was futile and would be met with overwhelming force. But surrender was met with fair treatment and genuine protection. The tour continued through exhibits showing the rapid technological advancement that had followed human expansion into space. Federation science teams combining human creativity with alien knowledge had made breakthrough discoveries that benefited all member species. Faster-than-light communication networks connected every Federation world instantaneously. Medical technology that combined human biological research with alien healing methods had eliminated most diseases. Energy production systems based on human fusion technology and alien efficiency had made scarcity a thing of the past. But perhaps the most impressive display was the one showing human adaptation to space itself. The species that had been confined to a single planet just 5 years earlier now had permanent colonies on dozens of worlds. They had learned to thrive in environments that would have killed them before the war, adapting with the same flexibility that had made them so dangerous as enemies. In her private office aboard the orbital station that served as Federation headquarters, President Santos received the daily intelligence briefing from Admiral Chen. The reports painted a picture of a galaxy that was rapidly stabilizing under human influence. 3 more species have requested Federation membership this month, Chen reported. The Cathari Collective, the Zendai Republic, and the Hive worlds of Sector 7. Any concerns about their motivations? Santos asked. The usual. They've all heard what happened to the Kethran and want to be on the winning side. But our cultural analysis teams believe they're sincere about accepting Federation law. Santos nodded. It was the same pattern they had seen repeatedly. Species throughout the galaxy had watched humanity's rise with a mixture of awe and terror. Most chose to seek alliance rather than risk the alternative. What about the border regions? Any signs of organized resistance? Nothing significant. A few pirate groups operating beyond our patrol range, but they avoid Federation space entirely. The reputation of human law enforcement seems to be more effective than actual patrols in most cases. It was true. Stories of human justice had spread throughout the galaxy with remarkable speed. Pirates and raiders who had once operated freely now gave Federation space a wide berth. The few who had been foolish enough to test human resolve had simply vanished, their ships and crews never seen again. But the most important development was happening in schools across Federation space. Human children were learning alongside young beings from dozens of different species.